we'll introduce ourselves once we get to the panel. But like I said, I'm just going to share a little bit around what is our approach to that and how do we approach it. There's been a lot of stats already. Dr. Blau, I think, presented a lot of these same statistics earlier. And of course, in Sacramento County, we are not immune to these statistics. These are mainly pre-COVID national statistics, but they are true for us in Sacramento County, not the least of which is that last stat there around suicide being the second leading cause of death for teenagers in our country. And so we're going to talk a little bit about our approach to how we're addressing that. And to do this, we're going to start with a video, and this is just going to a little under 5 minutes, and this video will set the stage for what we're doing, and then I'll kind of extrapolate some learning from that to set the table for our conversation. Okay, so that's just a little bit of a framing, and if you were to visit our website, that would be the first video you saw, and really what you hopefully saw there is a collective impact approach. We take a collective impact approach to bringing mental health services into schools. We have a partnership, a contract with the Department of Health Services. We'll get into the details of this in just a minute, but essentially the county runs a health center, a federally qualified health center, FQHC. And through our partnership, we extend that FQHC status to schools, essentially naming them as satellite centers of the county FQHC. That allows us then to hire mental health practitioners, place them in those schools where they provide direct mental health services to students, and then we can bill through the FQHC to Medi-Cal. So this is a self-sustaining, revenue-generating model of school-based mental health. And on paper, it's a partnership between the county health department and SCOE. And then, of course, it's a partnership between the districts and the schools. And then we like to include the students and the families in this, our community-based organizations, managed care partners. So this tree really is representative of what we're doing, a collective impact approach, a movement around mental health services in which every adult sees their role in supporting the healthy development of the kids we serve. And SCOE serves as the backbone or trunk of this collective impact movement. I'm going to share with you a couple framing slides that have been with us since the very beginning. We're in our 5th year now of this partnership. And we started with this quote. I'll give you just a moment to read that to yourselves. So when we started this, there was literally 10 of us in the conference center at the Sacramento County Office of Ed. And we talked about what could this look like? And this is the first quote that we talked about. And if this were a smaller workshop, I would ask you we would kind of process this together. But essentially, why would we start with this? Well, we started with this is because the scientific process, I'm not a scientist, but my understanding of the scientific process is that we start with a hypothesis and we ask questions, which then lead to better questions. And we don't actually, through science, we don't actually prove anything. We try to just ask better and better questions. And within an environment where we don't really know where we're headed, right? We have a vision. Isn't it really important for us to really ponder and interrogate those questions rather than searching for the best or easiest or most convenient answer right away? And so this question started our process and has lived with us ever since. And has led us to developing an analogy. A lot of us have heard that analogy, we're building the plane as we fly it, right? Well, I personally find that horrifying. Why would we want to do that, right? Particularly with Boeing planes are literally falling apart in the sky. So we talk about building a sandbox as we're playing in it. We want to have a sense of whimsy, a sense of adventure, a sense of playfulness while we work together to really interrogate those questions and play together to find some, hopefully, answers, live our way onto those answers. And these are the central themes that have emerged over the last 4 years. Relationships. Those of us who are mental health practitioners, we know the importance of the therapeutic alliance. Well, relationships are central to development, of course. And they're essential to collaboration. And within a collective impact movement, we have to collaborate. So we have to start with those relationships to lead to collaboration. Systems, we're bringing the health system and education system together. Hopefully we're merging those systems and not colliding them. And we have to build systems within that to actually help and facilitate that collaboration. At the end of the day, it's all about access to care. We take an equity lens. Equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging are at the center of everything we do, much like they're at the center of this slide. And our core components, this is kind of the through line of our program. I mentioned a self-sustaining program. If we hit 20 billable encounters per week, we're self-sustaining. A system we create is a coordination of services team on every campus. We have a universal referral system. And then if it doesn't if we don't document it, it didn't happen. So we have a vision, of course, to bring these systems together and allow for every adult to see their role. We have a mission, which is about partnerships and collaboration. We have some goals that are both education, behavioral health related. And we do have a partnership with UC Berkeley to help with that. I talked about this already. We're extending the FQAT status to schools to allow for that sustainable funding. We SCOE hire the clinicians, so we're truly integrating these systems, right? We are taking education as well as mental health approach to this. Of course, we're using some one-time dollars. It's kind of like an entrepreneurial venture. We have to have some startup capital, so we use those one-time dollars to help us get to that sustainability piece. And like I said, we're in our 5th year. So we started in 10 schools. We're currently in 58 schools, close to 60 schools, and our vision is to keep growing until we're in every school in the county. To date, we've served a little over 2,500 students. We're currently serving a little over 700 students. Those are the students who are getting ongoing care through our schools. And then you talked about, or Dr. Darling Heyman mentioned the MTSS approach. We can map this, right? SEL and relationship building in Tier 1, clinical encounters in Tier 3, and then mentoring small group work in Tier 2. And then last thing I'll share, or one of the last things I'll share, is that this coordination of services team, this isn't exactly a PBIS team or Tier 2 team. We think of it as a navigation system for MTSS. All referrals come into cost, and then we try to navigate those those referrals out to the appropriate tier within MTSS. We do have a convening that's coming up in January. If you'd like to come and visit some of our schools and get a deeper dive into what we're doing, this is a 2-day convening free of charge. It's at the SCOE Conference Center, and we will be going to school visits, including Vernon Greer, where you can see this in action. There's a QR code for the registration page. I'll pause for a moment. Talk amongst yourselves. And then we'll now proceed with the moderated conversation. But at 3 o'clock, we're also going to be doing one of the learning sessions. So if we don't cover everything right now, we will have a learning session at 3 o'clock. So you can come join us, and we'll take whatever questions you have for the 45 minutes that we have. And if we don't get to them, come see us in January, and you can come to see some of our schools. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go back to the slide so you know who we are. And Gabe, I'm going to start with you. Why don't we just share, just do some introductions, your name and title, how long have you been in this role, and kind of how long have you been working in this role to begin with? So again, my name is Chris Williams. I've been at SCOE for 5 years, and I've been working at the intersection of education and mental health for a little over 20 years.
All right. Yeah, I'm Gabe Leporati, and I'm one of the 6 coordinators that works alongside our clinicians and helps to support the work being done at the school teams. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor. I'm a former school counselor, and I've worked in the nonprofit sector doing some similar work. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Stephanie Simonich, principal at Greer Elementary School in Galt, California. I was said I would come today to share tiny audience, and this is quite a large group of wonderful people. I've enjoyed what I've heard so far. I've been in education for 30 years.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jazmin Peguero. I'm the school counselor at Vernon E. Greer Elementary, and I've been in education for a whole 3 months.
Hello, my name is Erica Gavidia, and I'm a clinician 2 or clinical supervisor with SCOE, School-Based Mental Health and Wellness. And this is my first year as the clinical supervisor in this role at this organization. Previously, I was a clinician at this program, serving one of the schools down in the River Delta area, Walnut Grove. And before that, I was a school counselor, worked in community-based mental health and nonprofits. So just been in the field since about maybe 2014, 2016. So not good with math, but you can do the numbers.
Hello, my name is Lien. I'm a licensed clinician with SCOE School-Based Mental Health and Wellness. I've been at Greer for 4 years now, and I've been in the mental health field for over 10 years.
So Greer was in our second cohort. They weren't. You were not one of the first schools, but in the second year of this, and Lien has been the clinician for that entire time. Stephanie, this is. I don't think we talked about this, but could you maybe just share a little bit about the Galt community, just to give folks in the audience just a little bit of understanding of what are the needs in Galt and what's the community like?
Sure. We have 5 elementary schools and 1 middle school. All of our elementary schools combine into the middle school. We have a diverse community. Each school has its own climate and needs. The particular school that I'm at has needs that are addressed through learner supports, and what a blessing it's been to be part of year 2 cohort and have Lien at our campus, because the personalized supports that they get to address their needs have been just amazing. And so lots of blessings have come our way from participating.
That's great. Let's stick with that for just a minute. The learning pillar here is shared goals. So understanding that you've been in education for 30 years and just been working in partnership with us for 4 years, what do you see as the goals of education, and how are those intertwined or not with the goals of mental health?
Okay. Well, I think it's been eloquently stated here. Someone talked about whole child education and the strands that fall underneath that in terms of our school climates, instructional strategies, social emotional learning, and then we call learner supports at our site, but MTSS system. And so we're talking about what happens in classrooms in terms of what teachers are sharing with students, SEL work that's happening, and what's happening on our campus, and connecting that to what's directly happening with services that are being offered through school counseling or mental health support. I don't know if that...
Yeah, sure. Gabe, do you want to pick up on that and add that? You were a former school counselor, right? So how do you see the goals of mental health intertwined with the goals of education?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of times we have that same sort of false distinction that we have with mind and body that was spoken about earlier with education and mental health. I like that phrase, if you're too mad and sad, you can't add, right? So thank you. Yeah, I'm going to copy that for this answer. So, but I really think what it comes down to is focusing first on the students and their needs. And as adults, we all sometimes have challenges in working together. And a wise mentor I had would share with me that the search for blame is always successful, and also the best disinfectant is sunlight. And so bringing those issues out into the focus of the team, and having all team staff meetings is something we've done in the past to better align people to get our issues as adults out of the way, and as programs that are not necessarily competing, but there might be tensions around the idea that they are. And so getting those people and those stakeholders in the same room, and understanding that we do have shared goals. We also want kids to be attending school. We also want their grades to improve. We just are focusing on a different aspect of that. And that's been the successful approach out in Galt.
Great. Let's put a pin in that for a moment. The idea that we have to work together as adults to serve the students. And sometimes those are competing commitments. Maybe we'll come back to that in a minute. But Lien, of course, I know your history, but if you wouldn't mind sharing just a little bit about what your role was before you joined this, and what are the reasons that that you joined SCOE, and what have you seen as examples that have kind of kept you here?
So before I came to SCOE, I was working at Sacramento County Behavioral Health as a mobile crisis clinician. So we were partnered up with the law enforcement agencies, and I would have a partner that I would go out to crisis calls on every day. And I worked throughout pandemic. So during pandemic, when schools were closed and the stores, people were not going out, we were out there responding to calls for service. And majority of those calls were children, children that really needed support, that were stuck in their home, very limited, coping skills, very limited social interaction. And so that was one of the hardest things for me at that time. Having to write 5150 hold on a child is, the hardest thing. So When I was at the mobile crisis team, this opportunity came up. And as a licensed marriage and family therapist without a PPS, it's very difficult to get into schools. And so I feel like it was a calling for me, an opportunity for licensed marriage and family therapists to work in the schools. And I thought, gosh, this is my calling. And the key is preventative work. So how do I work with an amazing team every day at schools, build those relationships, working collaboratively, access to care, right? Students don't have to wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks for care. They can get seen right away. And if they are not able to get seen, we're able to support them with any linkage that they may need. But yeah, that preventative care and relationship has really kept me in this position. The relationship with children, every day as kids are, walking in their line and they see me across campus and you see that smile and that wave. And that just, I know that means a lot for the kiddos and that means a lot for me. And so that's what has kept me here at Greer.
Yeah, thanks, Lien. So let's talk a little bit about what it literally looks like. And we'll talk a little bit about what it looks like right now, and then we'll kind of rewind and go back in time, because right now, Gabe, help me. We have we'll name the team that's serving Greer right now from SCOE's perspective.
Sure. Yeah. So thanks to the work that the Lien has laid the foundation of, and the school's willingness to collaborate with us and see us as an opportunity to serve students. We have an associate clinician who works at the preschool out there and works at the elementary school as well. Aiden, she's not here with us today. She's at the preschool, so that's good. And we have a family navigator, Brenda Nunez, who works as the support to provide social work type services and is a bilingual a person who helps the families get registered for our services and also make sure their material needs are met. And then we have Eric Enriquez. He is serving as a peer specialist, primarily focusing on those tier 1 and tier 2 portions. Hopefully we get to talk about his work. He's got an awesome garden club. I found out you can't grow dragon fruit in Galt through that, so it's good to know. And Lien herself. And there's also Erica Gavidia here, who is Aiden's clinical supervisor and is signs off on all of the hours that Aiden provides services for.
And how many days a week is Eric on site?
2 days.
2 days a week right now.
So we have a licensed clinician and associate clinician, both 5 days a week on campus, a peer specialist 2 days a week on campus, a clinical supervisor. And how many schools do you serve, Erica? Or how many clinicians do you oversee? 7 associates you supervise. And then we have a family navigator who serves Vernon, Greer, as well as how many other schools, Gabe?
10 others.
10 other schools. So this is a team that's been built out over the last 4 years. But how did it start, right? So Lien, you come in and you're super excited about partnering, but had you worked in a school before?
Not directly in schools. I've done community-based work where I would come into schools to see students for a limited amount of time, sometimes in the janitor's closet, and then
Yeah. So in that function, you were there for how many days a week?
I'm there 5 days a week.
No, when you would use the janitor's closet, yeah.
About once a week.
Once a week, and how many students are on your caseload?
I'm sorry?
How many students were on your caseload?
Oh, gosh.
No, then when you were at that once a week.
Yeah, like at least 25
Okay.
to 30.
Okay. Okay. So Stephanie, before Lien got there, what were some of the things that you had been put in place to kind of till the soil, so to speak, for a clinician being there?
Okay. Well, that was that came naturally from the Cal Hope experience that we got to participate in. And so as a principal, you kind of have to figure out how to plant some seeds and transition people into new learning experiences. And so we read a book called Fostering Resilient Learners. And we also started to participate in some professional learning around permission to feel. And we did a lot of work on identifying emotions, adult emotions in ourselves, and realized how important that was to the work we needed to do with students in our classrooms. And I think that set the stage for Lien being on our campus, but we do have a wonderful school counselor as well. We have a part-time psychologist. So in terms of support, it's slim. And so I think with open arms, once Leanne's office got set up, and it looks like a giant calming corner, and we do have calming corners in all of our classrooms too. Our teachers are wonderful about that, but it's a seamless. She's just part of the staff, and so we have transitioned from this term school-based mental health and wellness to students just walking up to us now and asking, can we get some of that? Can we have one of those? Can we get that support? Can we see Miss Lien? And so it's been really, I said it before, but it really is a blessing because administrators and teachers, school staff, we wake up every day with the same goals that you have, and that is, what can we do to best serve our students from the minute they get there until the minute they leave? That's our intention. And so yeah.
So you helped
Kind of
the adults
set the
on
stage
campus.
a little early.
Yeah. So you helped the
Before
adults on campus to identify their own emotions and kind of, yeah.
Did a little work with permission to feel. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds pretty easy, huh?
Yeah.
Getting the adults on campus to get in touch with their emotions.
Well, circling up was really difficult. No one really wanted to circle up, but we did end up making some circles, and some of it we had to have a little fun with. We do also take the Gallup strength assessment, so we do a lot of work with strengths at our school. Yeah, we started with school charters and moved out to classroom charters, how we want to feel when we're at school, how we want to feel when we're doing the work we do, how we want to feel in our classrooms, and with mood meters and lots of SEL things going on that support, removing the barriers from needing mental health support.
So that sounds like the work of Ruler. Is that right? You had Ruler as it, yeah.
Ruler. Yeah.
And Stephanie, I heard you talk a little bit at one point about the importance of being in a cohort with other schools. Can you talk a little bit about that?
In the cohort with other schools. That was really important for me because that's where the background knowledge of the support that you've given our site, that the SCOE has given our site, that's where that came from. That's the deep learning from the year 1 cohort shared with the year 2 cohort. So I had really great resources, mentors that I reached out to pull information. How did you roll this out? The lots of sharing of how they embedded their clinicians into their site. We did the same. So Leanne is just a part of our school site, and she attends all of our learner supports meetings, and just
Great.
right there with us all the way.
So we had some Cal Hope dollars for the county, which then allowed us to support through the SEL, social emotional learning work, Greer as well as other schools. And that work then, like I said, kind of tilled the soil, helped to introduce the idea of addressing the social emotional needs of students would improve academics. And then bringing Leanne in, that folks were kind of open to that idea. And then Leanne, maybe talk just a little bit about some of the work that you did to facilitate the partnerships on campus to help create things like the universal referral system or the coordination of services teams. How did you enter campus, and how did you begin forming those relationships with peers?
I spent a lot of time in the cafeteria. I spent a lot of time on the playground. I spent a lot of time in the staff lounge, and just being in space with everyone, especially the children. I think those are important places, as well as the classroom, but those are sometimes the unstructured places where you can really enhance this relationship building. And so I spent a lot of my time as I'm learning how to, be a clinician on campus, just really focusing on those relationships and collaboration, really getting to know all of the staff and kind of hearing their needs, as well as just spending playful time together with the kids.
Great. Erica, there's a lot of folks, I would imagine, in the room who aren't necessarily going to be doing the work themselves, but might be supporting staff going into. So you have, I think you said seven associates that you're supporting, some of whom are brand new and maybe have never worked in a school before. How do you, what are some of the things that you do to support them in entering a school and beginning this work?
That's a great question. I think some of them coming in brand new, not having worked at a school, I think a lot of that is coming down to the relationships and the collaboration with the admin on site. It comes back to what can mental health services look like at a school campus, while at the same time building those relationships to continue having that like collaborative work and mindset. We're all here for the same purpose of like serving the kiddos. And so a lot of it is learning this new environment for them. As a clinician who may have worked at community-based settings or may have worked at a clinic, coming into a school is a whole different ballgame. And so sometimes some of that support is these are the systems that work in a school. This is kind of what the function is. A lot of it is like, what are all these acronyms? Because there's a lot of them. What's an IEP? What's an SST? What's a 504? What is this? What, like, there's a lot of pieces that we can explain in a, like, kind of give the example of the clinical side of like the IEP. You know, if we look at a biopsychosocial assessment, we're looking at gathering data, we're looking at making some goals. And so it's really kind of helping them see the mirroring of what clinical work is and then working at a school and how they can work together so beautifully. And I know previously as a community-based, I would go to different schools as well, just like Lien. And I remember going into schools and being like, I wish I could just be at one school. Like, I wish I could be at one school and provide services to the students here, especially when I had like a sibling set at that school that I would go see back to back, see them, and then leave the school. And it just felt kind of like off. I couldn't be at the IEP meeting. I couldn't be at the attendance consultation of like, hey, there's some issues going on with attendance. How can we support? And so I think those pieces is how we support our clinicians in understanding that there is a whole picture to the student. Sometimes when they come into us at a community-based organization or a clinic, they come in and they show you what they want to see, what they want you to see. And when you're at school, you're able to see them on campus. So reminding our students, spend time, or reminding our clinicians, spend time at recess, spend time on the playground, spend time just like in these unstructured times, the assemblies. You get to see your student that you're providing a service to in a whole different light. So they might come in and be like, I'm really bummed today. And you're like, well, I just saw you at recess and you were having a great time. What happened between then and there, right? So like you're able to see those transitions and those shifts like real time. And so that's one of the biggest pieces of support, especially for a new associate.
What are some of the things you hear from associates in terms of what are they struggling with, particularly when they enter schools?
I feel like everything I mentioned.
Gabe, anything that you can think of?
Yeah, I think Erica did a really good job of explaining. I think the pace, and a lot of them are coming from clinical settings where it's 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock. I have one client, whereas at a school, it's 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock. There's 3 kids crying outside my door and there's a fight going on, you know? So it's getting used to that. You don't really get used to that, but you learn to prioritize the kid in front of you and do kind of the next right thing and just do what you can throughout the day. And those boundaries come into play a lot. With Erica and I talk about that a lot, is how do we help this new person to understand that they have a caring person that wants to help everybody, but the best way they can do that right now is by counseling the kid in front of them. So I'd say the boundaries and just the pace of the setting is oftentimes a challenge for new clinicians.
Along with the scheduling, you know, there's a lot of things that happen at a school that don't always happen when you're in a community-based. There's MAP testing, there's LPAC, there's things that come up that might shift the schedule in the week, and then that kind of throws off a clinician at first, and it's just the understanding of, yes, and we can find a different opportunity or we can get creative on how to provide the service. And so even speaking through clinical creativity and how to make that service still available and possible.
What's clinical creativity?
Oh. Whoops. No. clinical creativity can be providing the service in a creative way. So oftentimes, like Gabe mentioned, we're so used to like 10 to 11 is my client. I see them, they're here, and then they go. However, at a school, it's like 10 to 11, there's recess. Right? There's recess somewhere in the middle. So finding the time to service the student, whether it's like a 20-minute encounter or session where you're helping them build those skills out, whether it's a small group setting, having a couple students that are all practicing the same skills, whether it's you're out at recess and you're encouraging them to use their skills and kind of start generalizing into different areas, or whether it's coming in and at the beginning of the day and coming in straight to your office and being like, I just need to talk to you, right? And being like, okay, wasn't on my schedule, but let's get creative. Let's figure out what's going on. What's the need? What's the underlying need before I send you back? So just being really creative, finding those ways. One of our clinical supervisors always talks about he had a Dungeons and Dragons club where students would come in and process through different situations that might arise and how they would tackle those. And that's clinical creativity. That's getting really creative and using the students' interests and likes to provide the service.
Yeah, I'll just editorialize for a moment as well. Is I think in mental health we hear oftentimes like be where the client is, right? And oftentimes we think of that as metaphorically, right? Like match the emotions of a client. But in the terms of Patrick, as our the colleague that Eric is mentioning, like he had kids who wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons during lunch, and just quick aside. Patrick's a huge Dungeons and Dragons fan. So he was like, this serves your needs, and I also love to play. And so he started a club during lunchtime and played Dungeons and Dragons, and he billed for it. He had, like, there were clients in this club, and so he would drop a claim for that club. We have other clinicians who ran a ceramics club after school. We have a former clinician who's in the room who's an avid runner who started a running club after school. And like, so I think when we talk about be where the client is, it's sometimes you think about, and Leanne said when she came in and used the janitor's closet, right? And that push-in service, she saw her 25 kids, and I don't mean to speak for you, Leanne, but it's like those kids then saw like, oh, well, yeah, you're going to go see that clinician or that person. They didn't even know it's kind of like this faceless person. But, when we're running with kids after school, that's not clinical. When we're building, creating ceramics after school with students, that's not clinical. When we're playing Dungeons and Dragons, it's really kind of normalizing these services and being where they are. So that then when the student who's running with our clinician after school then needs to talk to somebody, it's not, oh, I'm going to go see that person. Oh, I'm just going to go see Mr. Tim, right? And that's just totally normal because that person is a part of the school, not this extra person which would further that stigma, right? I don't know, Stephanie, is this sounding familiar?
Sounds all too familiar. Sounds so familiar. I think a lot of conversation with the team around perspective taking is really important as well. For us, it is normal. 3 kids are outside your door while you're talking to a parent, answering the phone, and doing all things at the same time. But it's removed the barrier for our families of having to transport their children off campus to another city to receive support, and they get it right within walking distance. So within a minute, they're in Leanne's office, they have their session, they're headed right back to class. There's no reason to miss the appointment. There are no, it's not dependent on a grandma or an aunt to have to leave work, come to pick up their child. It removes all of those barriers. That's another, yes, the schedule is difficult and always will be, and there'll never be enough time, but it removes every barrier that was in place for us in terms of learner supports pre-Lien.
Yeah. And even that
Amazing.
pre-Lien, right? Not pre-clinical services, pre-Lien, right? Lien, I remember being at the school, and there was a young girl who would come to visit you every day, and you would kind of help her get to class. Is that right? Do you want to just talk a little bit about that?
Yes. We had a student, first grade, who had a really, really difficult time separating from her mom and going into class. It happens a lot, especially at the beginning of the school year. And there were a lot of safety concerns because I think she was just really anxious to where she was like screaming, yelling, kicking. And so we all came together as a team and came up with a plan where mom will drop her off after the bell starts. That way it's less stressful and you're not racing to your class. She gets dropped off in the office. Our staff in the office is really amazing and welcoming, and so she'll wait there. I will meet her in the office, and then we will walk to class together. Sometimes we take a trip to our school garden and do some mindfulness walk. And we'll talk about the trees and the plants that are changing, and then talk about something that she enjoys, and then she'll transition to class. And it took some time to build a relationship, but once we got into a really good routine and everyone worked together, she was able to go to class, and this year she is going to class on her own.
Sure, you can clap it up for that. One more question about the coordination of services team, because you said we come together as a team. I remember, I think you said, Lien, or maybe it was Gabe who told me that you were having some difficulty with parent or family engagement. And so now when a teacher makes a referral, they call home. Is that right?
Yes. So when I started, we had a social worker who was there for a very long time, and she had a really great system going on. And then she got a beautiful promotion. So when she left, I had no idea what system she had going on. And so when our other school counselor came, and we had some difficulty with referrals. And so both of us would get referrals, or sometimes we would get verbal referrals or email referrals. And so we got together and really used what's already there. So there's a form that teachers use, a referral form with questions. I just took that and put it into a Google form, created a QR code. School counselor, myself, and Stephanie has access to it. So we get notification right when there's referrals that comes in. It comes from teachers, families. And one of the questions on there is, could we get a lot of referrals from teachers? And one of the question is, have you contacted the family regarding this referral? And that really builds the collaboration between myself, Jazmin, the teachers, as well as the parents, because we're all working together. If teachers didn't make that initial contact, and I find when I made that contact, parents kind of have this moment of, oh my gosh, why, you're a clinician, why are you calling me? How come I didn't hear from my teacher? I didn't know that these things were going on. And so when teachers are able to make that initial contact and say, hey, these are the things that I'm seeing. We do have a counselor, clinician on campus. Is this something you might be interested in? Can I send them your number? And then when we make that phone call, already they're aware that we're going to give them a call. They're already aware that there's maybe some concerns or some things that the student needs to work on. And so that really opens up the doors for services right off the bat.
Great. So again, our themes, right? Relationships, collaboration, systems, and access to care. Hopefully you're seeing it come through in the actions, right? And Dr. Blau encouraged us, our transformation equation is, I think, vision, beliefs, actions, right, times the continuous quality improvement. We have a clear vision. We're aligned on our beliefs and what's important, and we're clear on what actions we need to take relative to bridging these two systems and really supporting our students. Jazmin, considering that you're very new into this system of education, can you speak to what your experience has been? And then also, I don't want to put anybody on blast, but like, if you do talk to your former classmates of yours, do you guys compare notes? What's different about your experience versus some of your former classmates who maybe don't have these supports on campus?
So I was doing my internship at two different sites. I had to do one elementary and then one high school. In both of those sites, there was no mental health clinician. Elementary as well, there was only 2 counselors for a school that had over 1,000 kids. It's impossible to get to everyone. So I already walked into this position with having experienced all of that. And so I was super nervous when I found out I was the only counselor with over, I think it's like 550 or more students. Again, 550 to 1, that's a horrible ratio, right? So when I found out Lien was there, and not only Lien, but then Aiden came, and then now we have Eric. So that's just a lot of support, and it relieves a lot of stress. So I'm thankful that this is my first position as a counselor and having that support of mental health clinicians, because I wouldn't accept anything less.
Awesome. So we're starting to wrap up. We have just a couple of minutes left, and I'm going to give the panel just time to think about this last question. Is there's folks in the room who are there's lots of opportunity relative to funding, multi-payer fee schedule, capacity grants, MHSSA. There's lots of different opportunities available. Where should people begin? Kind of like, what's one step that you would advise folks to either do or not do relative to beginning? And while you're pondering that question, one thing to do or not do to begin, I'll just remind everybody that we will be hosting a learning session at 3 o'clock. So if you do have questions for us, we'd love to take those questions, and we'll be in a separate space during that 3 o'clock learning session. So if you want to come and ask some questions of us, of the panel, we'd be happy to see you there. Okay, Gabe, I stalled as long as I could. What's one thing that you think folks should do or not do?
Yeah, in my opinion, keep the focus on the students and the student need. We all know the facts and statistics behind the youth mental health crisis, and it's a huge problem that we need to keep all of our focus on. And I kind of thought through a little bit what Vernon Greer has done, because their focus is on serving students. I think they've gone from some sites will come with a what do we do with this person perspective, and Vernon Greer very much came with what we do without this person once they're integrated. And then the same with Leanne's approach that she spoke about a little bit was, it's not so much, why would I do that? Why would I go in the cafeteria 5 days a week? It was like, why wouldn't I do that? Because there's a need here and I'm looking to fill it. So keeping that need at the forefront of the service being provided and making sure the students are coming first at all times would be what I would do.
My turn.
It's your turn.
Don't take no for an answer. I think you gotta keep moving, keep asking good questions, keep looking for support. I think I went to my superintendent and I just kept asking for a mental health clinician on our site, and I always say my dream came true. So it's so great.
Well, I even think about that, even what you talked about with the permission to feel, right? Like the idea of like convening a book study on permission to feel with folks who may or may not actually want to read that book, like that gives me anxiety just thinking about it, but not taking no for an answer and saying like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to, I think that's a great piece of advice. Thanks. Jazmin.
Oh, what advice would you give?
Some advice that I would give is, if you need that extra support, don't hesitate to ask for it.
Great.
I think what comes to mind for me is it starts with 2, and then it turns into 3, and then 5, then 10. So not being afraid to start small with like a conversation with someone next to you, across from you, someone who's in the same mindset of like keeping students first and such. And then it grows. And I think it always reminds me of, how this program grows, and you've shared before, is like it starts with a room of maybe 5 or 6 people, and that's okay. And how this conference came to be, it started as a room with a couple people in a room, and it has grown to be filled. And so same idea. It's like start with someone, and then together you'll grow.
For me, what's coming up is relationships. So along with relationship is, again, just starting that conversation, I think is so important. You never know who who's the other person that you are going to interact with and what ideas and strengths they have. And also the questions, right? So we may not have all the answers to the questions, but when we build those relationships and a network and that continues to grow, the answer is going to arise, as the room and the network gets bigger.
Yeah. And I would just encourage everybody just to begin, right? All the cliches, right? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, right? The students need the services, right? The data is crystal clear about that. And if we wait for the perfect time, right, just like anything else, wait for the perfect time to get married, to start having kids, to buy a house, like we'll never do it. You just have to do it. And so just begin and understand that we don't have all the answers, but just begin with who you have. And as you continue to build and learn, the services will continue to grow. So thank you all for your time, and come join us at our learning session. Thank you very much.